What up, doe? I'm your host, Shay, and welcome to Radicals for Good, a podcast about the quiet revolutions unfolding around us. We're here at 1301 Studios, a community space for radical creatives, coffee, and conversations. Sending so much gratitude to them for letting us use their space for our conversation today. Radicals for Good is recorded on Wawayatsanan, the lands of the Anishinaabe peoples, whose resistance and resilience continues today. Detroit liberation is rooted in Black labor, Indigenous survival, and community love and protection. We acknowledge those whose resistance made and make our city possible. In this episode of Radicals for Good, we're going to discuss how we can go about raising the next generation of revolutionaries and also talk about the different lessons learned about change-making, doing change-making work. I'm here with Alia Harvey-Quinn. Alia is the daughter of Black Panthers. Her calling into the world of activism, leadership, and community building was always in her DNA, but was emboldened by organizing with youth who were dealing with issues of criminalization and violence. Her commitment to building a freer, safer Detroit is both ancestral and unwavering. Alia is the founder of Force Detroit. Under her leadership, Force Detroit has established itself as a widely recognized and well-respected community organization, shedding light locally and nationwide on the solution to gun violence, with a primary focus on community violence intervention, also known as CVI. Force Detroit led advocacy for CVI adoption throughout the state of Michigan and led the team that drove the reduction in violence in Detroit's Cody Rouge neighborhood. Thank you so much for being here, Alia. I'm so happy that you're here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So something immediately stands out about your bio, which is you have this unwavering ancestral commitment to a freer and safer Detroit. What does that mean, and how has that looked throughout your life?
So both of my parents are former civil rights era Black Panthers. I grew up in the 80s, so I was not present during the time that they were active in the civil rights era. But I was raised with a set of values and a lens that became very, very powerful in my adult life. And so I've always worked in the nonprofit field. And when it came time to make, decisions that where I needed to care for community, those values just stood up and rose up in me. And I was just unable to address my work as if it was just a job. So that's what it looks like. It looks like a commitment to showing up with my heart. It looks like a commitment to loving on community and to finding solutions and caring.
You mentioned that your parents were Black Panthers and they had a heavy influence on you. Do you want to talk about your parents a little bit and share a little bit more about your childhood growing up?
So my dad was incarcerated for 27 years. And so he spent the bulk of my childhood behind a wall. And that was really, really hard on us. My mom, who is just a badass. She is legally blind, but also a Vietnam Arab vet. Also, all but her dissertation, she's achieved some of the highest levels of education possible, except for finishing her dissertation. Just a brilliant, resilient woman. And she didn't so much outright teach us. She's a badass.
Badass.
For sure.
Yeah.
She didn't outright teach us, sit us down and teach us the Black Panther platform. She modeled it. And so we watched her feed our elder neighbors, knock on their doors to make sure that they were okay, take in our friends who were in unsafe situations, like if they had run away or something. My mom would take them in. There was just an extraordinary kindness that was also militaristic, right? It was kindness, but it was not sappy. It was not without its strength. It was very, very strong.
What did that strength look like? Because I'm hearing there's a lot of strength, I think, in taking care of community, especially if you're feeding elders, you're raising children that become revolutionaries, right? You're doing all of these things also while she's like in school and just being a badass, honestly. Where's the strength? Because I hear discipline, but maybe not everyone hears that.
Yeah. So there was discipline, but we also like lived in this house full of guns, and we knew not to touch them, right? Like we knew we had been explicitly instructed to not play with them. And then I think my mom is a victim of abuse. And between my father's absence and whatever sort of skirmishes that he had in the streets, I think we lived a very quiet life, and she was intentionally sort of hiding.
I see.
So she didn't go about her professional life. My mom is a counselor. She's taught at many universities. So she didn't go about her sort of professional life fully sharing all of who she was. She sort of existed in a very subversive way. She would translate the ideas in ways that were deeply culturally relevant, but not share these ideas. Like her way of resisting the status quo and protecting us was to at once excel and simultaneously like sheath her identity so that we weren't targets. And she survived all this time without my father in deep poverty. There were times when we struggled a lot. And then there were times where we had learned to prosper, mostly because she invested in her own educational background. Just a brilliant, resilient, beautifully nurturing woman. Everything that I've achieved, I was trying to be like my mama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have siblings, right? Too?
I do. I have 2 younger sisters.
Okay. I'm also an eldest daughter, too.
There's trauma. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Yeah, for sure. But it's a blessing, you know? It's a blessing. I think like also when we're talking about raising like a next generation of revolutionaries, right? It's also about being an older sister, too.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the age gap, right? I think what I did with my sisters was have water fights and sneak candy. Like I was not embedding revolutionary values into my... We were very much so outside of the club, and somebody thought we were punks, and then we would never be scared. Like that was our child. My youngest sister is 5 years younger than me.
Okay. So
they were definitely my we don't have a large age gap.
And you have children of your own now,
I do.
Right?
I have 3 children.
Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. How do you go about raising your children? And what are you like pulling out as revolutionary that maybe you were raised in or not raised in? Like what stands out to you raising your own kids?
This shouldn't be revolutionary, but I think the biggest thing that I try to get my children to do is to not disengage their minds. Don't take instruction without thinking about what you're being told. Okay. Don't just passively accept ideas. Wrestle with them. Think about whether or not those ideas fit your context. Ask questions. It is really, really sad to see how much trouble they get into with other adults and in school because I ask my children to think. And even like when they get in trouble at home, I'm talking to them through the experience. It's like, hey, I've said this to you. I've said that to you. I've said this to you. How do I need to communicate so that you listen to me and you choose a different outcome? Because I don't want the punishments to escalate. And so then it becomes like, let's think through this, and I want you to hear what I want to happen on the other side of this punishment. This is not an exertion of authority. This is me trying to correct a behavior in a proactive way that I hope the world doesn't correct in a negative way. So
that's very revolutionary, though, right? Do you feel like you're kind of like working with the external world a little bit in that, or working against it?
Very much so against.
Yeah.
Very much so. My children are all the time in trouble because they asked a question, because they had a thought and they shared it. One of my kids had an African American history class. They were talking about an incident that was super particular to, like, my father was in Chicago in the Fred Hampton house when it was raided by police.
Wow.
And in her class, they said everybody died in that incident. And her grandfather is very much so alive. Mm-hmm. And so she raised her hand and she said everybody didn't die. And then she got, like, checked, put in her place, all this stuff by her teacher.
Right.
It's like, no, you have some expertise. You have something of value to add. I want our children, all children, to have the dignity of feeling like their voice has value in situations where they do have some expertise. Even if they're still learning, they have something to share, something to contribute, something of value to add. Absolutely. And that's very much so against the grain.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine, like, well, I know as someone who also embodies like that, we need to speak truth at all times, right? Yeah. It can be really hard because you're often labeled as like a disruptor.
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
A challenger. So I can imagine being a young person doing that. I can hear like you're bringing in your mom, that nurturing part of your mom, right? You just said, I wanted to be like my mom, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you nurture them through that?
I make them aware of the context that we're in, right? It sucks that you using your mind is a challenge to people. Let's think about how we can phrase things. Let's think about our body language. How you could have handled the situation such that your wisdom was accepted. Like, you could have pulled her aside. She might have felt like you raising your hand and saying what you said in front of all the class, going directly against her, was an inappropriate authority challenge, instead of you adding a piece of information.
But like still encouraging them to speak their mind and speak their truth, right? Like,
absolutely.
It sounds like there's a balance there.
And but also not. Sometimes speaking your truth is not helpful, right? Like, it might be true that somebody's breath stinks. Unless you're going to provide them with some toothpaste, a toothbrush, a sink in this very moment, that's not a helpful truth. It doesn't move anything forward. It won't. You could give them a piece of gum rather than. There's a commitment to engaging the mind voraciously, and there needs to be a commitment to loving on community and speaking truth with love.
Yes. And care.
Yeah.
If you were to like give advice to parents that might be listening to our podcast, especially in these times of like heavy oppression, right? What advice would you give them?
Gosh, let me just say the space that we are in is just so ugly. And it's so ugly because there's such a pervasive divisiveness. It's almost like there's a handful of us that feel like we're together, whoever that us is for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you feel like you're against the whole world. People who don't look phenotypically the same, and people who do look phenotypically the same but don't have the same set of values or aren't in your inner circle or whatever. When there are gaps in relationship and those gaps escalate to, life or death instances like we deal with at Force, but also like this broad swath of political violence that we are watching cover our country. The key is just always to have a conversation that challenges a stereotype. It is always to be brave. Now, I don't know. I think there are some communities that are more fragile than others, and they can choose to engage somebody else's bravery. But I don't think we should be asking, for instance, Latino people to be brave with ICE.
Because there's a risk. There's a risk there, a huge risk. And so it takes bravery of folks that might not be as at risk. Right?
Absolutely. to create that bridge. And so there's work for allies, right? When that bridge is created, I do think we should show up to it, but I think we should be sort of vigilant to not be trapped. Trust has to be earned, and that earning process is a slow overtime thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hearing a little bit about when in your response, like a little bit of Black Panther's teaching, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you tell? I don't know, just like give me like a glimpse into your brain really quick. I'm like, okay, I'm thinking this about the ICE situation. What are you pulling from? Also, can you explain a little bit more about like what the Black Panthers are?
Yeah. So the Black Panthers, as they existed in my parents' era, because we ain't gonna act like this is all the same, right?
Right.
So the Black Panthers, as they existed in my parents' era, were a political party that held a body of revolutionary beliefs around moving our community forward. Yeah. Some of their beliefs were militaristic in nature, just that we wouldn't be slaughtered without there being resistance. And some of them were sort of deeply humane, like launching the breakfast program that the government then absorbed. They also created the Universal Patients Code of Rights, right? Like deeply, beautifully human folks.
Yes.
And
I love that. I love that word. Like deeply, beautifully human.
Yeah.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah. And it's like, because they ventured to have dignity adjacent to their humanity, and because they weren't willing to be slaughtered, right? They've been demonized in our history. But they were just feeding folks, just launching programs, just trying to create laws and systems and policies that worked for people in general, and everybody benefited from their work.
And still do, to your point about the free breakfast program,
and
right?
The Universal Patients Code of Rights. So to answer your question about what I'm pulling from those moments, from those learnings for this moment, these are movements, Black people in particular, because I haven't studied many other movements. We have always been taken down from the inside. And so it's almost like the work has to be done in layers. There has to be something that everybody can show up. Anybody who shows up should be able to feed the children, right? Like you can pass out food box. There's another layer of people that might do the administration. And all the way up to where there is a level of strategy that is only an insider game. You know what I mean? Like
I know exactly what you mean.
You can't share the strategy with everybody because they will undermine it.
Undermine it, or like the reality of infiltrators, right? Like I think you and I were discussing a little bit about how movements can be co-opted sometimes too. Yeah. From the inside.
Yeah, I do believe that our government is still likely active in sabotaging movement building work. But I think our egos are even more active in sabotaging. I think before the government ends up showing up to our doorstep and trying to videotape us and things like that, like they did Martin and Malcolm, we end up showing up with our egos and sabotaging good work much sooner. I don't think we get to the level of good work before the egos show up.
How do you think that we combat that? How do we get to a place where we can do remarkable change work, egos aside?
That I don't actually have a question for, but I do have analysis. I think you have to observe. You know, when I come to the work, I do a bunch of sort of icebreakers, intros, like feely types of things. Yes. But what I'm actually trying to do is hear people's hearts, hear their why. I might ask a question, what do you need from me as a leader to show up as your best self today? And I'm trying to give you space to process. I'm trying to learn more about you I'm trying to learn how I show up to you with respect and dignity so that you can give your all on this particular day. And what I'm really trying to understand is the set of values of the person in front of me so that I understand how they can be best used for this movement work. Mm. And, you can do that if you collect those wisdoms over time. Mm-hmm. It helps you sort of understand, okay, this is a person who deeply internalizes their home life. They need peace and stability. We might need to ground before we go into our work. This is a person who needs recognition. They need that voice. They thrive in that space. Put them on a microphone, right? Mm-hmm. Here's another person. They want to be the backbone. They're deeply logical. They will be frustrated if you don't allow them to lead structurally. Mm-hmm. Well, we need that in movement building work. Over time, you get to collect these stories about your people and think about how best to position them. Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking a lot about like non-traditional parenting as you're speaking, right? Like for me, like I'm a neighborhood auntie, like I'm an oldest daughter, right? And so I am constantly thinking like, oh, all of these children are my children. But also I've had like interns specifically over the years, and there's kind of like a nurturing or a parentification that happens in movement work that I'm hearing you talk about too, and like how can we embody that like in a non-traditional parent kind of way?
Yeah, and I don't think that is parenting. I think it's mentoring.
Mentoring, okay.
And so I think for people of color, there are not these structural on-ramps into high-quality career positions that are made readily available. And I think we have to figure that out. I know that like many Black folk don't have mentors. They don't know how to be in a learning relationship with somebody else, right? If I'm going to teach you something, we have to suspend the sort of hierarchical space and get into a space of curiosity and get into a space of sort of openness, get into a space of vulnerability. If there's a teacher-student dynamic, there is like a kindness present, right? Yeah. And then you're also teaching me. This work becomes a set of lessons that we're curious about. We explore, we dissect together, we come up with our analysis, our theory, we test it, and we, if implemented successfully, we tweak it and roll it out, right? This becomes like a dynamic space for solution making. Yeah. We can't get there if we can't suspend that ego, the hierarchy, that piece.
The need to like feel like you always have to be a boss and not a servant.
In control. Yeah.
Right.
There's no reason for me to teach if your goal is to take those lessons and be a boss. And there's no reason for you to learn from me if the whole goal is to be a boss.
Right.
And I see that a lot in our community, and I think it's just sad.
It feels like there's a lot of like emphasis, especially in CVI work, sharing power. How have you experimented with sharing power lately? Because that's what I'm hearing when you say like mentorship and like you're learning from each other, and we have to like set aside our egos to learn from each other. It's a little bit of like sharing power too, right?
In the organizing process, there's a thing called cutting an issue, and that's where you take a political issue, you've already analyzed it, you've talked to a bunch of people about it, you have a lens, and then you have to think about what's the best policy angle, how do we move this issue forward? And I think that is always sort of like a dynamic space where everybody in the process learns together. No two instances are going to be the same. So I might be in a coaching role, or I might be being coached. I have mentors. I love my mentors.
Good. Yeah.
Shout out to y'all.
I love y'all. I love my mentors too. Yeah. They're necessary, especially as women, especially as resisting women.
Absolutely.
It's so important.
Absolutely. I think I think you have to let people fly or fail, and you've got to give them a wee bit of resources to start out with. And I think you don't frame it as flying or failing, but I think you you have to let that person, you have to make a set of agreements on the front end. And those agreements include, this is a learning space, this is not outright failure, this is, we're going to figure out how to move this vision forward. You can test your theory, but I'm raising you to be a leader. I'm not going to tell you what to do at every step. Now, I'll tell you what I've seen. I'll share my insights, my advice, my history. You're going to have to figure out what to do with that. That only works for certain personality types. Some people do have to be told what to do. And some people everybody will have to figure out how to live into that leadership while existing within the structures that we have to maintain, right? You still got to do your financial reporting if you want a reimbursement, or else it won't come back at all.
Right.
We still got to write that grant report. Yeah. Like there are functional things that we have to do. But there's also this space of like growth, curiosity, learning, and people should be allowed to explore that.
So the next generation of leaders, those that you are coaching, those that you are mentoring, how are you instilling those like revolutionary values into them?
I don't think I end up with mentors that are not already revolutionary. I think it's a big, tall task to think that we're reprogramming somebody's values as adults. Yeah. I don't think we actually are. I think we only get to observe and listen deeply. Do you think that like you are encouraging or like helping to like foster those revolutionary values that they already have? I think most people have some revolutionary values, but they don't know how to make them productive. If you have a coach or a mentor that is an organizer, that's skilled at change making, that understands certain recipes for success, then you can make your sort of rebellious tendencies successful. You can turn those into successful change making. Okay, well, I have one more question for you. Yes, ma'am. In your own words, what does it look like to live a radical life? I think we've got to love each other. I struggle with that as an introvert. I struggle with just like being present. I think we need to not only love each other and to build loving infrastructure. That's the most revolutionary thing that we can do. Is like non-egoic, non-classist, non-hierarchical, non-gendered, just care. I think that transforms hearts, that transforms spaces, that creates an environment where healing through trauma is possible. Yeah, I think the core of it all is to be in caring relationship, kind, present, supportive. You know, there's some people like my dad, oh my God, he can just be present, swim in it. I can't do that without taking several naps. But I have my people, and I invest in my people. I love on my people. I check in on my people. And I'm intentionally sharing strategies, ideas, wisdom. In my professional roles, I share power. What I learned in reflection is that you share voice, resource, access, but because everybody doesn't have the same intention, you might not share positional authority. You might not share the actual like leadership. Obviously, it sounds like I'm talking about, I love my people at Force. I'm proud of the work that they're doing now. I'm not talking about Dewan. I think he was the right choice for the role. But I think when I stepped into leadership at Force Detroit, I had this naively hopeful goal that I could build a coalition where we showed up as peers and equals, and that we get the sort of agenda done because we were all bought in. And the truth is, if it's your vision, you have to hold that space. You have to say, this table is for this vision. You are welcome to sit at it. If you sit at it, I will share resources.
Mm-hmm.
I will share voice. Like, we held press conferences, and it wouldn't be all about force. It would be multiple leaders from multiple organizations speaking, talking about their insights. We helped some leaders of different organizations. We provided them with the resources to fully develop op-eds and get them printed. You know, if we think like this, we can work across organizations to advance a landscape-wide big goal.
Yeah.
Right? But I think, you know, the way I approached it, there was a lot of hard lessons to be learned.
What's interesting about Force Detroit is that y'all are very good at that. You're very good about like sharing the table too with other CVI groups.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see the CVI world, because that's how we met, right? Is like through CVI work. It's really interesting to see just all the changes that are happening, especially within the city of Detroit.
Yeah, I think that's my parents' fault too. Like, the values around, you know, sharing power. I was raised with the phrase "all power to the people."
All power to the people. I
think we need an informed citizenry where we can all vote, and we need information, and we need good hearts.
Yeah.
And we're not there yet as a society, or else we wouldn't have elected Trump.
Word.
Yeah. But I think we can get there. And I think in that space, that's when all power should go to the people.
So usually we ask our listeners to step outside of our comfort zone and take action based on our conversation. And so one of the actions we would ask our listeners is to possibly donate to Force Detroit.
So I started Force Detroit in 2015 at a really difficult time in our nation's history. We were watching over and over police kill Black people. And simultaneously, we had one of the worst summers ever in terms of violence. So we were seeing serial rapists in our city. There was a group of 6 young Black men who were targeting couples, raping and robbing them. And as a youth worker, I found my community with young brothers. Like, they would show up to my program. We would break down rapper lyrics and reconstruct them, think about what poetic devices were being employed, write their own, practice performance. I would challenge them. As a youth worker, when you see stuff like that happen, you feel like a failure. You feel like the work wasn't enough. It wasn't meaningful enough. It wasn't substantial enough. It wasn't deep enough, right? Like, if these are our kids doing our kids, these ain't adults. This group of kids was, I think, between the ages of like 16 and 19. That's fully children, right?
Children, yeah.
It just broke my heart. You know, there's this hard place. And in this hard space, you ask yourself if the police who are killing people are the right people to deal with these, to heal these children, or like, how should they be dealt with? And in that space, a number of groups came together. Now, it was funny. It was funny seeing them do their thing, because they were marching down the street and knocking on doors, and they were sort of willing to be aggressive in going after what was right for the community. Wasn't strategic at all, right? But it was beautiful and well-intentioned, and it lit my heart up. And that's in that environment I started Force Detroit, to support that body of people with resources, with nonprofit infrastructure, with opportunity. I said to you earlier, my dad was already a volunteer in one of these groups. And so, as such, I knew some of the inner workings. I knew that they needed resources. I knew, you know, and so I set Force Detroit up to support that work. And we did.
And still are.
And we got the legislation passed. most recently, like earlier
Yes.
this week, the honorable, beautiful, amazing, I say this because I watched her journey as an organizer, Mayor Mary Sheffield, signed into office the legislation that we have been fighting for 5 years that stabilizes the CVI work through mayoral administration. You have to undo the legislation in order to get the CVI work. It is huge.
It's huge.
The office is now stable, and it is going to fund violence prevention work, community violence intervention, and domestic violence prevention work. So, I mean, it's beautiful to see this work come to fruition. Every year, Force Detroit hosts a annual Community Violence Intervention Day in Lansing. So we bring together roughly between 2 and maybe 400 violence impacted leaders to talk to their legislators, right? Black folk all over the Capitol. Just, folk that don't typically show up to these spaces, sharing their stories, their insights, what they need with their legislators. It's an amazing time, right? Please donate. You can go on the website. The website is forcedetroit.org. The contribution will definitely go to an organization that is well worthy, has committed to supporting the field in multiple ways, and that has paved the way for the stability of this field, not only in Detroit, but across the state.
Yes. Is there any action items that you want listeners to do or to think about?
I think we should all be thinking about how to be active in movement building in person and not just online. Go to the meeting.
Go to the meetings. Seriously. Seriously, go to the meetings.
Talk to your legislator. Talk to your city council person. Show up in person in real time. It's one thing to have a series of conversations online that may or may not disappear indefinitely, right? It's a whole nother thing to show up and be a part of a community of people that have the same values as you and are willing to use their time to move the agenda forward.
Like we were talking about that earlier, a Black Panther Party value, right? Of being like human. Being in community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Alia.
Thank you for having me.
This has been a great conversation, and I feel very full, so thank you.
Thank you, too. I enjoyed it, too.
Thank you to our listeners for making space with us today. Please listen to our next episode and send this episode to someone you thought about while you were listening. And remember, the revolution may not always be televised, but it's likely in your backyard or even within yourself. Sending my deepest gratitude to Daniel, our music producer, Rhea and Jonah at Penny Detroit, Janae and Jordan, my thought partners, Indy and Alex at 1301 Studios, Ilea, our guest today, and all my other collaborators. Peace and blessings.